The boardroom is dead silent. 40 floors above Manhattan, floor-to-ceiling glass frames a steel gray November sky. 14 men in suits sit rigid around a table worth more than most people's houses. At the head of it, Richard Hale, 53 years old, silver-templed, a face carved for magazine covers, presses both palms flat against the mahogany and stares at the door. The door is opening. His attorney leans in and whispers something sharp in his ear. Richard doesn't move. His jaw tightens. One knuckle goes white. And then she walks in. Diana Hale. Not Diana Hale as he last saw her. Pale in a hospital bed. A drip in her arm. Hair gone from the chemo. Eyes sunken with exhaustion and the particular grief of a woman who just watched her husband file for divorce from the chair beside her forced stand. This Diana is something else entirely. She wears a charcoal blazer she bought secondhand. Her hair, just barely grown back, silver-streaked and fierce, is pinned back without apology. There are shadows under her eyes she hasn't bothered to hide. She carries a single manila folder. She sits down at the opposite end of the table. She opens the folder. "Hello, Richard," she says. Her voice doesn't shake. Not even a little. Richard Hale, a man who built a $2 billion empire from nothing, who has made senators flinch and CEOs retreat, goes visibly still. "You shouldn't be here," he says. Diana looks up from the folder. Across the length of that enormous table, her eyes find his. "And yet," she says quietly, "here I am." The diagnosis came on a Tuesday. Diana remembered that specifically, a Tuesday, because she had leftover pasta in the fridge she'd been saving for Wednesday, and her first absurd thought upon hearing the word malignant was that she probably shouldn't have bothered saving it. Stage 3 breast cancer. The oncologist, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Reyes, kept speaking. Aggressive but treatable. Chemotherapy. Timeline. Support system. Diana sat in the plastic chair and watched Dr. Reyes's mouth move and thought, "I have to call Richard." She called him from the parking lot, sitting in the passenger seat of her own car because her hand was shaking too badly to drive. It rang 4 times. "Diana." His voice, already carrying that faint impatience he developed over the last 2 years, the one that appeared whenever she interrupted something important. "Rich." Her voice cracked on the single syllable. "I need you to come home." "The doctor." She stopped, pressed her hand over her mouth. "I need you to come home tonight. Please." A pause. "I'm in the middle of the Caldwell acquisition. Can it wait until—" "I have cancer." Silence. And then, "I'll be home by 9. He was home by 11:30. She would learn the truth in fragments, the way you learn most devastating things, a piece here, a piece there, each one small enough to rationalize, until suddenly you're holding a complete picture and your hand is shaking so badly you can barely keep it upright. The first fragment, a perfume she didn't own, smelled once on the collar of his jacket in January. The second fragment, a name she found in his phone in February. Celeste. Texted 27 times in a single Saturday while he told Diana he was at a conference in Chicago. The third fragment, he came home one evening in March, 2 weeks in her chemo, the worst 2 weeks, the weeks she couldn't keep water down and her hair was coming out in fistfuls.
"I know this will hurt."
And he stood in the doorway of their bedroom with his hands in his pockets and said, "We need to talk." She was sitting up in bed with a basin beside her, wearing the soft gray beanie their daughter Sophia had sent from university. She looked at his face, and she knew. The way a person knows before they know, somewhere below thought, below language. "Don't," she whispered. "Diana, don't." Her voice was barely sound. "Not tonight. Not while I'm—" She gestured at herself. The basin, the beanie, the trembling hands. He sat down on the edge of the bed. Not close. On the edge, like a man ready to stand up quickly. "I didn't want to do this while you were sick," he said. "I want you to know that." "Then don't. I've been trying to find the right time for 6 months. There is no right time." Her voice cracked open. "Richard, I'm in chemotherapy. I am in chemotherapy." "I know." He looked at the floor. "I'm sorry. Are you leaving me?" He didn't answer, which was its own answer. She sat very still. Outside, a car alarm wailed and stopped. The floor stand beside the bed hummed softly. "Is there someone else?" she said. Another silence. "Yes." The word landed like a stone dropped into deep water. She heard it hit. She felt the ripple move through her. She didn't cry. She was too shocked to cry. She just sat there in her gray beanie with the basin on her lap and looked at the man she'd been married to for 22 years and thought, I don't know you. Her name, Diana said, is Celeste. He looked up, surprised she knew. 27 texts, Diana said, on a Saturday in February, while I was at my mother's. She paused. I saw the name. I didn't look further. I thought, her voice hitched. I thought I was being paranoid. I thought it was nothing. Diana. How long? Does it? How long, Richard? He looked at the wall. 14 months. The room tilted. 14 months. She had been sick for 3, which meant for 11 months before her diagnosis, while she was healthy, while she was fine, while they were going to dinner parties and taking a vacation to Portugal, and she was planning their anniversary trip. He was, get out of this room, she said. Diana, I think if we could just talk. Get out. Her voice, thin and wrecked as it was, cracked through the room like a whip. Get out of this room, or I will throw this basin at your head, Richard, and I promise you I have enough left in me to aim. He got up. He walked out, and Diana Hale sat alone in the master bedroom of the home she had shared with him for 19 years, in her soft gray beanie, with a basin on her lap, and she began, very quietly, very carefully, to come apart. The papers arrived on a Thursday. Diana was at the cancer center, 3rd round of chemo, the needle already in her arm, the slow cold drip beginning its work, when her phone buzzed with a notification from the legal filing system. She'd been listed as a party to a divorce proceeding. Hale versus Hale. Filed that morning. The nurse noticed her face. Mrs. Hale, are you all right? Diana looked up from her phone. Across the room, through the window, she could see the parking lot. Her car was there, the older Volvo she drove because Richard had leased a newer one in his name. Her hands were cold. They were always cold during treatment. I'm fine, she said. She was not fine. She called her daughter Sophia from the parking lot afterward, leaning against the Volvo because her legs weren't entirely reliable yet, the November wind cutting through her coat. Sophia answered on the first ring. Mom, how was? He filed. A sharp intake of breath on the other end. What? Divorce papers. Today. While I was... Diana laughed, and it was a terrible sound, nothing like a real laugh. While I was in the chair. He filed while I was in the chair. Sophia. Oh my God. Sophia's voice dropped. Mom. I need you not lose it right now, Diana said. Her voice was steady. She had no idea how. I need one of us to not lose it. I'm coming home. You're staying at school. You're not putting your semester at risk for this. Mom. Sophia. Diana closed her eyes. The wind pushed against her face. I'm going to be okay. I need you to believe that so I can believe it. Can you do that for me? A long pause. Then, very quietly, yes. Good. Diana opened her eyes. She stood up straight. I'll call you tonight. She hung up, stood there for a moment in the cold parking lot of the cancer center, in her gray coat with the collar turned up. Then she got in the Volvo and drove home, to the apartment she just rented with the small amount of personal savings she'd been hiding since February, the day she'd seen the name Celeste on that phone. She hadn't looked further, but she'd started planning. Her name was Margot Chun, and she had been Diana's best friend for 17 years. And she was the first person Diana told everything to, and the first person who didn't say, I'm so sorry, or you're so strong, or anything like that. Instead, Margot sat down across from Diana at the kitchen table of the small rented apartment, looked at the papers spread out between them, and said, Tell me what you need. Diana looked at her. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea. Her head was bare today. She'd stopped wearing the beanie at home. I need to understand what he has, she said. Margot was a corporate attorney. Semi-retired. Sharp as a blade. Explain. Hale Capital, Diana said. The board. The company structure. I need to understand all of it. She paused. Because when we got married, Richard had $11,000, a leased apartment, an idea he'd been working on for 3 years that nobody believed in. She looked at Margot. I believed in it. I worked. I put in the capital. I took the calls he was too nervous to take. I built the pitch deck that got their first investor on board. I remember, Margot said quietly, he restructured everything in 2019 during the refinancing. My name came off the operating agreement. Diana's voice was flat, controlled. He said it was a formality, a tax thing. She set down the mug. I signed the papers he put in front of me because I trusted him. Margot was very still. Diana, are you saying? I'm saying, Diana said carefully, that I want to know if there is anything still attaching me to that company. Any legacy ownership. Any agreement that survived the restructuring. Any document that was perhaps not executed properly. She met Margot's eyes. I'm saying I would like you to look. A long silence. Then Margot reached across the table and picked up the first paper. Then let me look, she said. If you're already on Diana's side, and honestly, how could you not be? Hit that subscribe button right now. Because what Margot finds in those documents is going to change everything. Don't you dare look away. Margot called at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. Diana was awake. She was almost always awake at that hour now. The insomnia, a lovely parting gift from the chemo, sitting at her small kitchen table with a glass of water and a legal pad where she'd been writing things down. Things she remembered. Dates. Conversations. Decisions she'd been part of that she'd never been credited for. Talk to me, Diana said when she picked up. Are you sitting down? Margot. Diana. Sit. Down. Diana sat. In 2017, Margot said, her voice the kind of careful that means the news is large. When Richard restructured the operating agreement, his attorney prepared a document removing you from ownership. You signed it. I know. What you didn't know is that the document was prepared incorrectly. A pause. The precise kind of pause that a person uses when they are about to say something that will rearrange someone's world. The signature page was formatted for an LLC structure, but Hale Capital had already converted to a C Corp 2 months earlier. The conversion was never disclosed to you. The restructuring document you signed applied to an entity that no longer legally existed. Diana stopped breathing, which means, Margot continued, very quietly, that your removal from ownership was never legally executed. You are still, as of today, a 23% stakeholder in Hale Capital. The kitchen was absolutely silent. How much, Diana said, is Hale Capital worth? As of last quarter's valuation. Margot paused. $2.4 billion. Diana set down the pen she hadn't realized she'd picked up. 23% of $2.4 billion. She sat very still for a very long time. Margot, she finally said. Yes. He's been trying to sell the company. Diana's voice had gone somewhere quiet and cold and completely steady. The Caldwell acquisition. It's not just an acquisition. He's selling. He closes in 6 weeks. A sharp silence. Diana, if he sells without my knowledge, without my signature, as a 23% shareholder, the sale is void, Margot said. Voidable at minimum. And any proceeds distributed would be subject to your claim. Diana stood up from the kitchen table. She walked to the window of her small rented apartment and looked out at the city, the lights, the movement, the indifferent enormity of it, and she felt something shift in her chest, something that had been cracked open for months, something she thought was just grief. It wasn't just grief. It was fury. Clean, cold, quiet fury. I need a plan, she said. I already have one, Margot said. But Diana, you need to hear me clearly on this. What I'm about to tell you is going to require you to walk into that boardroom in 6 weeks and face him directly. You're going to have to be well enough. You're going to have to be ready. Diana looked at the city. I'll be ready, she said. She didn't stop treatment. That was the first thing. Margot had suggested, gently, that she might want to take a break from chemo to get her strength up. Diana refused. I finished the protocol, she said. I don't quit on anything. So she did both. She went to chemotherapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She spent the difficult days, the ones where getting off the couch was a victory, reviewing documents Margot sent her, reading corporate law summaries, memorizing the structure of an acquisition she'd never been told was happening. She started walking. 30 minutes a day, even when the cold made it brutal, even when her legs felt like water. 40 minutes. An hour. She started eating, really eating, purposefully, feel not comfort, and sleeping when the insomnia allowed it, and letting Sophia call every night, and she stopped apologizing to people for how she looked. She looked like what she was, a woman who had been through fire and come out the other side, and was not finished yet. Sophia flew home for a weekend in October. They sat on the couch and watched old movies and ordered too much Indian food, and Diana let herself have one evening, one full evening, where she cried about everything. The marriage, the loss, the betrayal, the terror of the illness. All of it. Sophia held her through it. Mom, Sophia said, very softly, when it quieted. Are you sure about the boardroom? You don't have to. He filed papers on me while I was in chemotherapy, Diana said. Sophia went quiet. He sat on the edge of our bed and he couldn't even look at me. And he told me he'd been with someone else for over a year. And then he filed papers while I was in the chair. Diana wiped her face with the back of her hand. I need him to look at me. Across a table. As an equal. As someone with power. I need him to have to reckon with me. Sophia took her mother's hand. Then we make sure you're ready, she said. The morning of the board meeting, Diana was up before 5. She showered slowly. The hair that had grown back was shorter than she'd ever worn it, silver streak from the treatment, and she looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She looked different than she had 2 years ago. Different than she had 22 years ago, when she'd married a nervous, brilliant, hungry man with $11,000 and a dream she believed in. She looked like someone who had survived something. Good. She put on the charcoal blazer. The one she bought secondhand, that fit her perfectly, that she'd had tailored for $12. She put on the small gold earrings Sophia had given her for Christmas 3 years ago. She picked up the manila folder. She looked in the mirror one more time. Okay, she said to her reflection. Quietly. Like a beginning. What's about to happen in that boardroom? Richard has no idea she's coming. His attorney is about to walk in and completely lose his mind. Subscribe right now, because this next part, it will make your jaw drop. Don't miss it. She rode the elevator to the 40th floor. The building smelled the same as it always had. Cold air, expensive coffee, the faint electrical hum of a place where large sums of money changed hands. She'd been in this building hundreds of times. She'd helped design the logo on the lobby wall. She'd sat in on the pitch meetings that filled these floors with people and purpose. She pressed the button for 40. The doors opened. Richard's assistant, a young man named Patrick who had always been kind to Diana, looked up from his desk and froze. Mrs. Hale. Good morning, Patrick. She smiled at him. Is the board assembled? Yes, but you're not. The meeting isn't. I know. She kept walking. Don't get up. She pushed open the boardroom doors. 14 faces turned. And Richard looked up from the head of the table, and she watched the color drain from his face. In 22 years of marriage, she had watched him face down hostile investors, negotiate brutal deals, hold his composure through crises that would have broken other men. She had never, not once, seen him look afraid. He looked afraid now. Diana. His voice was careful, controlled. The voice of a man buying seconds. This is a closed board meeting. I know. She walked to the far end of the table and sat. Placed her folder in front of her. Opened it. You need to leave. I don't actually. She looked up. Because as of the 2017 restructuring, which was not correctly executed, Richard, as your legal team is about to discover they should have caught, I remain a 23% stakeholder in Hale Capital. She slid a document across the table toward the company's attorney, a man named Gerald Frisch who had gone the color of old paper. Mr. Frisch, page 4, paragraph 7. You want to look at that before you say anything. Gerald Frisch picked up the document. The room watched his eyes move across the page. The room watched Gerald Frisch's hand, very slowly, set the document down. Richard, Gerald said, in a voice carefully stripped of all expression, I need to speak with you. This is a fabrication, Richard said. His voice had gained an edge, the edge he used when he was cornered, sharp and a little wild. Whatever she's brought in here, it is not a fabrication. Diana's voice was level. You will find the original restructuring document, filed with the state, in which the signature page references an LLC operating structure. Hale Capital completed its conversion to a C Corp in March of 2017, 2 months before I signed. She paused. I signed a document that had no legal standing. My removal from ownership never occurred. One of the board members, a white-haired woman named Patricia Osei, whom Diana had always liked, leaned forward. Is this verified? Patricia asked. Independently verified, Diana said. By 2 separate corporate attorneys. This is not. Richard pushed back from his chair, his voice climbing. Diana, whatever you think you're doing. I am protecting my interest in a company I helped build, Diana said. Quietly. Without anger. Without theater. You are attempting to close a sale worth $2.4 billion without my knowledge or signature. That sale, as it stands, cannot legally proceed. Silence. Complete, total, crushing silence. Richard Hale stared at her from across the 40-foot table. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on the mahogany. His eyes, dark, calculating, already repositioning, moved over her face like he was searching for a weakness, an opening, some angle. He found nothing. She held his gaze without flinching. This woman who had sat in a hospital chair and been served divorce papers, who had lost her hair and her marriage and her sense of the ground under her feet, who had gotten up every single day and kept going. "You're sick," he said. His voice dropped. The room went very still. "You are in the middle of treatment. You're not. You can't be thinking clearly." "Richard." Patricia Osei's voice cut across the room like a blade. "I would stop talking." He stopped. Diana looked at him for one more moment. Then she looked down at her folder and turned to the next page. "I don't want the company," she said. Her voice was almost gentle. "I want what's mine. My 23%. My legal share of the sale proceeds." She looked up one last time. "And I want you to know," her voice wavered, just barely, just for half a second, the only moment in that room where the human being beneath the composure showed through. "I want you to know that I built things too. I worked too. I was there too." She swallowed. "And you don't get to erase me." The room was very, very quiet. Richard Hale looked at his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, the woman he'd left in a hospital bed, the woman he'd assumed would collapse quietly and disappear, and said nothing. Gerald Frisch caught up with Diana in the corridor before she reached the elevator. "Mrs. Hale." He was breathing quickly, his voice low. "I need to ask you, the Caldwell timeline is your problem," she said without slowing. "And Richard's, and the legal team that executed a structurally flawed restructuring in 2017. She pressed the elevator button. "You have my attorney's number." "Mrs. Hale." He lowered his voice further. "Is there a number? A figure? Something we could discuss before this goes further?" Diana looked at him. "There is nothing to discuss outside of court, Mr. Frisch." The elevator opened. She stepped in. "Have a good morning." The doors closed. She stood alone in the elevator as it descended, the folder in her hand, the city growing closer below her. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them, these hands that had trembled through chemo, that had trembled the night she'd been told, that had trembled as she'd signed documents she hadn't understood, and she pressed them together. They steadied. Floor 30, 20, 10. She breathed. Lobby. The doors opened and she walked out into the cold November morning, and she stood on the sidewalk for a moment, the wind cutting against her face, the city moving around her in all its enormous, indifferent energy. Her phone buzzed. "Sophia." She answered. "Mom?" "How did?" "I went in," Diana said. Her voice, finally, in private, in the cold morning air, broke just slightly at the edges. "I went in and I sat down and I said what I came to say." And Sophia's voice was tight with hope. Diana looked up at the building. 40 floors. The glass catching light. "And it's not over," she said. "But Sophia." I made him look at me. Her breath caught once. Released. He had to look at me. A sound from Sophia's end that might have been a sob or a laugh or both. "What happens now?" Sophia asked. Diana turned away from the building and began walking. "Now," she said quietly, "it gets complicated." 3 weeks later, a document arrived at Margot's office. Not from Richard's legal team. Not from Gerald Frisch. From Celeste. Margot called Diana at 9 p.m., her voice stripped of its usual composure. "Diana, I need you to come in tomorrow. First thing." "What is it?" A pause. "Celeste has filed her own claim on Hale Capital. She's alleging." Margot stopped, chose her words with precision. "She's alleging that Richard transferred assets to her privately. Before the restructuring. Before your removal." Another pause. "Diana, if what she's claiming is true, your 23% may not be 23%. The room went cold. "Then what is it?" Diana said. "That's what we need to figure out." Margot's voice was careful and exact. "But Diana, there's something else. In her filing, she references a third party. A pause with weight in it. A pause that meant brace yourself. A name you'll recognize." Diana gripped the phone. "What name?" Margot said it. Diana stood very still in her small rented apartment in the November dark, with the city glittering outside her window, and she thought of all the things she had known and not known, and all the things she had trusted and should not have, and all the ways that a story you thought you understood can turn, suddenly, in the light. "I'll be there at 8, she said. She hung up. She stood at the window for a long time. And she thought, it's not over. It's nowhere near over. Part 2. The name in the document drops next week. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. Comment below. Did Diana do the right thing going into that boardroom? Or should she have settled quietly? And who do you think that third name belongs to?